the front. We're a little bit in a different kind of space, so maybe the taller people can stand in the back. Everyone in the back, why don't you come up front? Someone in the back that's listening to me, point out all the people that are talking and make them. So there's chairs in the back by the drinks over there. If anyone wants to grab a folding chair for yourself, there's a few extra. There's a seat right up front for someone. Okay, so this is probably the best we're gonna get. I think everyone in the back here, all right? Cool. So we're just gonna kick it off. Our first speaker tonight. First of all, everyone, thanks for coming to the Internet Archive. I know this was kind of a last-minute switch, but honestly, a cooler venue, right? Yeah. Yay! Yay for Internet Archive, thank you! So we'll just start it off with Nima Majur, who is talking. He has a company that's bit.co.in, which uses the Namecoin blockchain, and he's going to be talking about Namecoin to you all.
Hello. Right. I'm Nima Majur. I've been an entrepreneur here in the Bay Area for about 10 years and involved with Bitcoin since about 2011. And I want to talk about Namecoin and why I believe and many believe it's the future of DNS. So I'm going to be talking about why is Namecoin important, some basics about the Namecoin protocol, the history of it, merged mining, how to apply it, and questions if we have time. So why Namecoin? The current domain name mapping system that maps website addresses to servers all over the world is rather centralized and thus allows certain parties to intervene and allows for censorship. And all over the world, governments and other dangerous groups do in fact take advantage of this centralization. For example, you've probably heard recently that the Russian government just started banning Bitcoin.org and related websites. And the solution to that, wouldn't it be great to have a completely decentralized alternative that relies on blockchain technology where everyone can be their own registrar and where censorship is pretty much impossible? So some basics about Namecoin. Namecoin is the first altcoin that has ever existed. It was forked off of Bitcoin in April 2011, and the first block was mined on April 19th, 2011. Total coins, 21 million, about 10 and a half currently in circulation. Block time, about 10 minutes. Mining algorithm, SHA-256, and the block reward is currently 25 Namecoins, halves every 210,000 blocks. So pretty much the same as Bitcoin so far. The only difference is actually that unlike Bitcoin, the Namecoin client offers explicit commands to register, update, and look up name value pairs in the blockchain. Name registration cost is currently about 0.01 Namecoins. And Namecoin is basically mined by Bitcoin miners via merged mining, which I'll talk about a little more in a bit. Actually, how many here have heard about Namecoin? Okay. How many have used Namecoin? Okay, cool. So there's a point to what I'm doing here. I came across this during my research. Has anyone heard about Zuko?
Yeah.
I hadn't until I found this. So basically what Zuko Wilcox O'Hearn, an American computer scientist, said is that if you come up or set up a naming and mapping system, you can only ever have 2 out of 3 desirable characteristics. So either it's decentralized and human meaningful but not secure, which is basically any nickname that we make up for ourselves. Like Robert could use the nickname Bob, but some other Robert could use the same nickname Bob, so it's not really secure. Human meaningful and secure would be our existing DNS system, which is just regular website URLs, which are not decentralized. And then decentralized and secure are OpenPGP public fingerprints, but they're not human meaningful. So what some people have said is that that Bitcoin solves that problem. And I have an animation where Namecoin, yeah. So Namecoin fulfills all 3 of those characteristics. So some people have suggested that Namecoin actually solves that conundrum. And here's a tweet from WikiLeaks from June 2011. Namecoin and Bitcoin will be revolutionary. This was tweeted by WikiLeaks about 2 months after Namecoin was introduced, actually. A little bit more on the history. November 15th, 2010, Bitcoin Talk user Apamato started a thread called BitDNS and Generalizing Bitcoin. He proposed changes to Bitcoin to facilitate a decentralized name mapping system that he called BitDNS. December 9th, 2010, user Satoshi responded, I think it would be possible for BitDNS to be a completely separate network and a separate blockchain, yet share CPU power with Bitcoin. Anyone know what that came to be known later on, what Satoshi proposed there? Yeah. Does anyone know if he was actually the first one to introduce that idea? Yeah, I wasn't sure, I was curious. And then December 10th, he added, piling every proof of work quorum system in the world into one dataset doesn't scale. The networks need to have separate fates. So in parallel, December 4th, 2010, a separate thread announced a 3,500 Bitcoin bounty for implementing the system. And then in April 2011, user Vince D announced Namecoin's completion in a separate thread. And just as a side note, at that time, Bitcoin was worth 20 cents. And when the bounties came due, Bitcoin was worth about $29. So a lot of people sort of tried to, or at least one person tried to lower his bounty because it was worth so much more at that point. A little more on merged mining. Namecoin started merged mining with block 19,200. So today, many Bitcoin miners are also Namecoin miners. Merged mining basically means that a Bitcoin miner can include the hash of a Namecoin block and prepend it to the Bitcoin block that he's currently solving, and depending on whether or not he finds a solution at the Namecoin or Bitcoin difficulty, he can submit a solution to either one of the blockchains. Or if he finds a solution at both difficulties, he could technically submit a solution to both blockchains. And so, in a way, there's really no detriment to mining Namecoins. There's no extra cost, there's only extra profit as a Bitcoin miner. And so the benefits are, there's no extra mining hardware needed, no extra mining infrastructure, network, pools, and all that. Miners make more profit and have no extra cost, basically, other than maybe running an extra client on their server. And the Namecoin network hash rate is at around 30% of Bitcoin. So currently it's around 100 petahashes, I think. Which I think is probably the strongest altcoin that exists, unless somebody knows better. So how does Namecoin find its application? It's basically a completely decentralized name value mapping system. The flagship use case is the .bit domain system. It allows basically anyone with a Namecoin client and some Namecoins to register a .bit domain. So for example, I don't know if SF Bitcoin Social already has a .bit domain. Not yet. Well, in a few seconds, because I'm going to just do it from here. And there are browser plugins to browse these .bit domains. Another system probably a lot of you have heard of is onename.io. It's a decentralized identity system. And another website, which this is my website, bitcoin, which is a address shortener, kind of like a Bitly for the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency community in general, and that also utilizes the Namecoin blockchain. So I wanted to briefly show you how to set up your own name, or how to request a name in Namecoin. So this is the Namecoin wallet. It probably looks familiar to most of you because it pretty much looks a lot like the Bitcoin wallet, but up here is a section that's called Manage Names. So on here you can, at the top you can see where you can request a new name, and at the bottom all the names that you've already requested. So as you can see, I already have some names here, and you can update those, edit those, or you can register new names. So I'm just gonna reserve SF Bitcoin Social, and I'll transfer it to Paige later when she gives me her Namecoin address, if she wants it.
Can you make a meetup? Yeah, meetup. Can you make an SF Bitcoin meetup?
Yeah, sure. Hope that's not taking it. Yeah, so then, it tells me, are you sure you want to register domain name SF Bitcoin Meetup, which corresponds to SF Bitcoin Meetup.bit? This will issue both a name new and a postponed name first update. So this is how Namecoin works. When you first register a name, the client issues a name new command, which basically announces to the network there's a new name that's being registered, and then you have to wait for 12 blocks. I don't know if you have to wait, but it's common practice to wait for 12 blocks, after which you can issue what's called the name first update command, which then allows you to fill your name with data. And for these bit domains, what's common is a JSON data structure with IP address and some other metadata. So yeah, this is what I was talking about. So if you have any IP that you want to point this to and things like that, you can enter that here, or you can put your own completely customized information into the value, into the name information field. But the standard is basically the IP address. And I can also I'll just dismiss this for now, and I'll get back to that later. And yeah, then I just wanted to just real quick talk about how this has helped me solve a business problem. So on Bitcoin, you can get a shortened version of. So if you want to make it easy for people to find your Bitcoin address, you can, for example, I have one here, Bitcoin/Nima. Then people can just go there or look up your name in here and find your address here, send a payment, or use a QR code. And in the beginning, the challenge that we ran into was that a lot of people said, well, if you register your name, and if I register my name in there, then how do I know that you, which is me, are not just going to swap out your address for mine and then collect tips that were supposed to go to me? So then we introduced Namecoin as a solution to that. So, for example, sorry, I'm just going to go back to if you go to look up Nima, if you scroll down here, it says here, this record is safely stored and verifiable as Bitcoin/Nima in the Namecoin blockchain. And then it gives you a link to Namechain, which is a common Bitcoin block explorer, which doesn't make it 100% safe, obviously, but at one point we'll just add a couple more sources for verification down here, so that there can be little to no doubt that that is in fact the address that belongs to my name. And you can also look up some other interesting things. What were the names before? Or what was the value in there before? And as you can see, I'm just utilizing a simple JSON string here to store the data. And that was that. Let's go back to this. Sorry. And sorry. Oh, sorry. So that was basically all I wanted to show you guys. I just want to say a big thanks to Namecoin core developers and everyone who made it happen, everyone who continues to work on it. Big thanks to everyone working on plugins, apps, and supporting the network, onboarding people. Big thanks to you for coming here and listening. And if you want to if you want to find more information about Namecoin, you can go to namecoin.info. There's also a Wikipedia page about Namecoin, and there's a Namecoin subreddit, reddit.r/Namecoin. If you have any questions for me, you can contact me at nima@bit.co.in or via Twitter handle coinjabber. And now remember, one last thing I want to show you is in Chrome, for example, in Chrome you can get a Namecoin, .bit browser plugin. So I just set up my website .bit. So see, this is a .bit domain, and it uses Namecoin. Yeah. And there's other sites out there that have started using this. Like I just came across this one the other day. Oh no, not this one. Sorry. Fiends.bit and so this is all because I installed a browser, a Chrome plugin, and you can look this up on. You can go use your Chrome browser and type in .bit. Actually, I'll just show you .bit.me Chrome extension, and first result, it's just quick and easy installation, it's free. And you can browse .bit domains with your browser, decentralized, no censorship possible. Every Bitcoin website should do that as quickly as they can, because people in Russia could just go to .bit domains and nobody could stop people from browsing them.
This is bypass the ICANN system.
Mm-hmm.
Do you need to be running the Namecoin?
No, all you need to do this is a browser plugin.
Well, the plugin is a node of the Namecoin chain or not?
That's a good question. I think it's probably like. What was it?
The Firefox plugin, freespeech.me, requires you to run a Namecoin wallet and client.
Oh, okay. Well, the .bit.me on Chrome doesn't, as far as I know.
Why is the follow-up question?
Yeah.
Why is it that it can't be censored?
Because
And they just block the .bit extension?
no, because your browser, you tell your browser look at .bit, and then your plugin looks in the Namecoin network for the value that domain resolves to. So there's no centralized sources that I have to go to figure out where to point. Say it again, sir.
When the browser goes to this place, it goes somewhere, right?
Sure. I mean, they would have to shut down literally the server that I'm going to.
Well, they can shut down that one server, but you cannot. It's all the other ones that they have.
Sure.
What's the question?
How does it prevent
So he's asking, how does it prevent censorship? And I was saying that it definitely makes it harder to block to shut down certain domains. Yes, you're right. It can shut down any server for sure, but the mapping system at least is decentralized. So there's other things in the works to make it harder to actually shut down the server itself. I assume Yeah, sure. Anyone can. My Namecoin client is technically a proxy, if you will. Any computer, any node that pulls my computer can get that information because I have the Namecoin blockchain on my computer, just as anybody else with a Namecoin wallet does.
So if there's any other questions, Nima will be around for the night. So we're gonna move on unless there's like dying question right now. But okay. So thanks, Nima. So yeah, next up we're just gonna do a very casual Q&A with Vitalik Buterin, who is the founder of Ethereum, and he was actually also the founder of Bitcoin Magazine. So, and he's very knowledgeable about Bitcoin in general. So feel free to ask him anything. He's very knowledgeable in this space. So I'll just actually one thing, if you want to do a lightning talk, we have like a little sign up sheet by the registration book, and we only have one mic, so ideally we would have people line up here so everyone will speak in the mic if it's possible. If that doesn't work, we can just start yelling, but let's try to do that. So if you have questions, does that work for you, Vitalik? So Vitalik Buterin. Questions?
Okay, that's the first question. What is Ethereum?
I've already answered that so many times, I really don't want to.
I came to hear your answer.
Ethereum is a platform for building decentralized applications. It uses a blockchain similar in design to the Bitcoin blockchain, but instead of just supporting operations related to moving currency units around, the idea is it's a blockchain design that has a built-in programming language. So you could build theoretically any kind of programs inside of it, and those programs basically run on chain. So if you something like Namecoin could theoretically be built inside of Ethereum in basically just a few minutes, is kind of what we're targeting. Yes.
What's the data limit on contracts?
So there's no data limit per se. So the way stuff is, yeah. So the way that resources are regulated in Ethereum is that there's this concept of gas, and so every computational step, every byte of data, and so forth has its own sort of different associated gas cost. So say every byte that goes into a transaction has a gas cost of 5. Every operation has a gas cost, which is a minimum of 1, but maximum, the highest is something like 500. And so basically, every transaction has to specify the amount that it's willing to pay at the start of execution, and the limit of resources that your transaction can spend basically is based on the amount of gas. So if you want to have higher limit, then you specify a higher gas value, but you have to pay twice as much for it. I mean, theoretically, there is a sort of limit of how much gas you can use in a single block, and that kind of is a hard limit, but that's flexible, so it's going to end up adjusting with the network. Yes?
Do you see Ethereum being used as a currency, like merchant transactions?
So we're not really targeting Ether being used as a currency for merchants that much, and I kind of predict it'll be more used as a sort of back-end sort of fuel and medium of exchange for contracts. I mean, theoretically, you always could, but I mean, it's also possible to build other currencies on top of Ethereum, and so you could theoretically build any kind of currency inside of Ethereum as a contract. Theoretically, you could do a Bitcoin sidechain, you could do a stable coin, you could do like a coin backed by something or whatever else. So it's I mean, if anything, we'll probably see all those different options tried out. Yeah.
How do you obtain gas, and what's the relationship between Ether and gas?
So when you send a transaction, you have to specify the amount of gas that you're willing to pay for, and then that's the amount of gas, and you also have to specify the fee that you're willing to pay per unit gas. So when you specify those two numbers, if your transaction gets accepted, then it's the miner's choice of whether or not to accept it. If you put a value for if you put a gas price that's too low, then the miner might not accept it. If the transaction gets accepted, then the gas price multiplied by the gas gets subtracted from your ether balance, and then that's the amount of gas that your transaction has to process. So you're basically just buying it right at the time that you're sending each transaction.
So is gas and ether interchangeable?
So gas is not a currency, right? Gas only exists as this sort of ephemeral thing that's just there in the middle of transaction execution. So gas is something that you just buy at the start of executing a transaction in exchange for ether. Yeah.
How close are you to going live, and what's left to do?
About 2 months. Security audits are probably the main priority. A few other things like building up our wallet application, building up some things in our interface, and so forth. Yeah.
What's your mining algorithm?
So it looks like we've finally gotten to the point where our efforts at ASIC resistant mining have actually gotten to something that looks like it's relatively stable. So it's an algorithm that's based on it's kind of similar to the Dagger Hashimoto idea that we've been sort of working with for the last few months, where basically you have a very small data set and then you use that to generate a large data set. And if you're mining on the large data set, but in order to verify, you actually only need the small data set. So it's sort of a model that's sort of simultaneously like-client friendly and memory hard. So I mean that's there. Yeah, that'll be out there for 1.0. Eventually, we're going to be introducing proof of stake, but that's more long term. Yes.
Do all miners have to process all transactions, or is it broken up somehow?
Right now, all miners have to process all transactions. It's a standard blockchain architecture. Later on, we'll have plans to break it up somehow, but it's actually a very complicated research area to figure out exactly how to do that securely. Yep.
Are you considering homomorphic operations so I can put private data inside of Ethereum to process?
It's private data inside Ethereum it's actually much harder than homomorphic operations. All that entire set of cryptography of fully homomorphic encryption, obfuscation, and so forth is just so horrendously inefficient that putting the every node processes every transaction inefficiency on top of that basically means that you'll have to literally pay a house worth of transaction fees every time you operate one of those. Yes.
What kind of hardware will you be able to mine on?
GPU, 1.5 gigabytes of RAM, at least. Yeah.
How are you going to transition from one consensus system to another?
Basically, there's going to be a sort of contract built into version 1.0 where you'll be able to vote on switching to the next version, and then once that happens, then there's going to be a sort of countdown timer after which one chain will shut down and clients will switch to the other one. Yep.
Is there going to be a big launch party?
Maybe. We're still working that out. Wait for announcements. Yeah. Yes.
What do you think about Eris Industries?
It's interesting. I mean, okay, great. They're putting the Ethereum virtual machine up for other kinds of use cases. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing what kinds of uses people actually will have for their particular implementation of the technology. Yeah. So yes.
How are you going to count votes for switching from the consensus thing?
Basically stakeholder voting. So if you have coins in your contract, then your contract will be able to deposit coins into either the vote for a switch contract or the vote against a switch contract. And then that contract will just keep track of the balances. Yeah. I guess aside from stuff that's happening with Ethereum, general updates. So the cryptocurrency research group that we've been talking about for half a year now is moving forward, and we're actually running what's basically our first conference, the Crypto-Economicon down south in Mountain View, cryptoeconomicon.com. First day it was yesterday. It's been pretty fun. Feel free to show up for the next couple of days. So what we're doing there is basically kind of an event that's focused on not just Bitcoin currency, but cryptocurrency, crypto economics, decentralized technology in general, and bringing together all sorts of different groups that are just talking about various things in that area. So we had panels on proof of work, proof of stake, identity and reputation, legal issues, scalability, stablecoin designs, and so forth. So, coming from here, I guess CCRG will continue to develop, and we're still looking to figure out exactly how best we can try to support research in all those areas. Ethereum generally, as I mentioned, about 2 months away from launch, hard at work on our external partners are hard at work on the security audit. We're hard at work on figuring out as many peripherals as we can get ready for launch in order to have the best possible 1.0. Stuff that's going to be in 1.0, Ethereum blockchain, a fairly minimal version of Mist. So you'll be able to run decentralized applications. You'll be able to do all the stuff that you've been able to do right now. We probably won't see anything like really complicated and neat, like a system that is sort of the full integration with natural language specification and so forth that people were showing at DEF CON. A lot of that stuff is going to take quite a while. Light clients not in 1.0. I mean, chances are 1.0 might never have a light client because switching to proof of stake will happen at the same time as the light client switch, so we'll probably just do our light clients for proof of stake directly. And there's actually been some pretty interesting research in that regard, how proof of stake can actually work very nicely with light clients, because you can sort of have, once you have a proof that there exists a security deposit, and then once you have a proof that that security deposit is going to continue to exist for some period of time, then you basically could use anything signed by nodes that have that deposit, and you can sort of trust those signatures, because if they sign the wrong thing, then they can get their deposit taken away. So there's a bunch of interesting mechanisms we can sort of skip thousands of blocks ahead of a time.
Do you mind talking about like a couple of different applications that are being built by you guys or outside developers? Sure.
So by us, wallet. So we're at this point we're thinking of a multi-sig wallet by default. Some kind of chat application just to show off how you can use Whisper and how you can use the blockchain as a name registry. I mean, the name registry contract looks like it will be in 1.0. Applications being done, some kind of stablecoin thing. We'll probably be experimenting with that. So the idea is, some kind of currency that's uses contracts for difference or some other mechanisms. There is a bunch of blog posts on this stuff that tries to, instead of keeping the supply constant and having the price be volatile, basically try to keep the price constant and make the supply volatile instead. So, and the idea is, once you have that currency, it's a currency, you can pass it around, you can make a wallet around it, you can make an exchange around it, and so forth. There will be Gav's already built a decentralized exchange, so we'll have that out probably. Stuff other people are building, that's probably even more fun. There's one group in San Francisco that's building prediction markets on top of Ethereum. There's groups doing voting on the blockchain. The groups, I guess, that's made a lot of press lately is the whole Samsung IBM collaboration on Internet of Things, this Adept project. So they're basically trying to look ahead, and they're seeing that Internet of Things is going to happen, and with the way that big tech companies are thinking today, if we don't do anything, chances are it'll just be something like, everything's just going to be based off of some centralized service, and we'll have a few sort of different walled gardens, and just a few companies controlling large parts of the entire ecosystem. And so they're the guys at IBM were thinking, well, how do we use some of this technology to make a platform that's sort of more open source and neutral? And so they realized that the things that IoT devices need to do, there's a bunch of protocols for, there's a bunch of key use cases. There's you need to make payments and you need to sort of maintain some kind of permanent state that's accessible to the outside. So blockchain is good for that. You need to send messages between different devices. They use telehash. I think they're considering integrating Whisper as well. And they also need to send big files around. They're using BitTorrent. So inside of Ethereum or inside of Mist. So the other thing is that it looks like minimal, like initial versions of Whisper and Swarm maybe around either at launch or soon after it. So not making promises. It's kind of development's kind of basically it's basically sort of happening in parallel. So they're using BitTorrent, and we have this sort of files, this sort of basic protocol that we've been working on for basically storing just generally chunks of data in a sort of distributed hash table called Swarm. And so the point of storing stuff in Swarm or in something like BitTorrent as opposed to the blockchain is that if you store data on the blockchain, it's very expensive. Meanwhile, but the thing with the blockchain is that if you store data, you can manipulate it in any way, and you have full consensus on exactly what the state of some particular system is. With distributed hash tables, it's a sort of different model. It's, hey, I have this big file, I want the file stored. I don't need the file stored by absolutely everyone. If it's only 200 people storing it, that's fine, because you don't need to have global consensus on it. All you need to know is, here's a file, here's a hash of a file, and at some point in the future, if I, send out a hash of a file, I want to be sure that there will be nodes that will be able to reply back with that original file. So, one use case of that is that, one of the problems with the kinds of decentralized applications inside of Mist that we've been building right now is that, they're based on web pages, it's based on HTML and JavaScript. Where is the HTML and the JavaScript stored? Right now it's on a server. Ideally, if we're trying to do this decentralized application thing properly, we'd like the applications to be stored somewhere other than, not on a server, or at least in some kind of properly distributed cloud. So that's sort of the initial use case that we're targeting for Swarm, kind of, distributed content delivery network. So, the IoT guys haven't been thinking of, we had a discussion on Swarm versus BitTorrent. It seems like they're going for BitTorrent. Basically because their use case is different. Like, they're not trying to, IoT devices aren't trying to browse the web. They're just interested in grabbing software updates from time to time. So it's a sort of trade-off, I think, between, I guess, efficiency and latency. Yes.
Why do you want Ethereum to exist?
It just seems like an idea. It just seems like something that has to exist. I guess, like. When I first came up with the idea, it just seemed like something that just obviously had to be done, and there's just a lot of stuff that keeps on getting redone by crypto protocols over and over and over again. You got Bitcoin, Bitcoin, Namecoin, and all the other coins just keep on reading. All of them have to have their own consensus algorithm, all have their own peer-to-peer network, and so forth. And it just sort of intuitively makes sense that, people should be able to write code as quickly, push it out as quickly as possible. All these things are just really simple sort of, the ultimate logic is just a 10 or 20 line script. And if that's actually the case, I just think you should be able to write the program in 10 or 20 lines of code and push it out.
What made you choose this particular problem as opposed to something else?
Can you speak a little more on that?
Sure. What made me chose to work on Ethereum as opposed to some other problem? Hard to say. It's the opportunity that presented itself, I suppose. If events in my life had been different, I could easily be working on machine learning right now. Yeah. Yes.
I like Switzerland. I like Switzerland.
It's nice. Pretty. It's got mountains. It's got lakes. It's also got very expensive, just about everything. Yeah. They should. How much a tea costs in Starbucks in a Starbucks in Switzerland, right? Anyone want to guess?
$8.
Actually, it's about 5.5. Actually, with the recent rise in CHF, it's probably somewhere slightly around 6.5 now. So pretty close. And that's a T. The latte is probably going to go up even higher.
We'll take one more question.
Sure. Yes.
Can you talk a little more about the rationale of moving from to proof of stake?
Guys,
rationale behind proof of stake is, I mean, first of all, the things that I like about proof of stake are, first of all, you don't have to worry about ASICs. So, we've been trying really hard to make an ASIC-resistant algorithm. We really don't know how long it's going to hold. It's just, and there are, a lot of the people that we've talked to are very pessimistic about that. So, if we don't want mining power to be centralized, then not having to deal with that whole issue is just a more elegant solution. It's also just much less wasteful. So I really don't like the fact that Bitcoin basically burns $300 million right now, $300 million worth of electricity, and we don't really get much out of it.
It's going to burn up the earth, and you don't care.
Yeah.
Vitalik,
Yes.
Given that wealth is concentrated in the fiat world, why don't you think that the stake would be concentrated too?
Why don't you? It could be. So, okay, my general thoughts on cryptocurrency egalitarianism are, first of all, if ASICs take over, ASICs are even more concentrated than Bitcoin is. So, mining is not really going to help. I mean, it did a fairly good job in the first few years, but then just, eventually just got corrupted. So, that's kind of, I guess, another reason why we kind of like this approach of doing proof of work initially, because, initially it will be fairly distributed.
So you'll at least have maybe some concentration of wealth, but not the environmental catastrophe potentially that.
Yeah, so proof of work's got the environmental catastrophe and the concentration of wealth.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah. So, the other thing is that people are talking about can we make this cryptocurrency distribution fair? How do we do that? And so first of all, I guess it depends on what you're trying to optimize for. Are you trying to prevent a few people from having very, very many nodes of currency, or are you trying to make sure that everyone has a chance to get at least some amount? For the first point, I think it's just a matter of having a bigger economy, and not doing something like. And not having a situation where we start off really, really small, and the whole currency ownership starts off at 50 people. Then, as far as the second thing, I really don't think mining is going to solve that problem. People in Africa don't even have computers. So, there are a lot of. You probably could do some very interesting experiments in trying to figure out some kind of algorithm that's sort of based on human labor, captchas or whatever, to try to come up with a currency that people could actually efficiently mine. It's an interesting area of research. It might actually succeed, but ultimately, in the long term, I don't think any one cryptocurrency is ever going to be fair. I think the way that we're going to get fairness is basically just by having this whole ecosystem of cryptocurrencies where new ones are always going to keep on appearing. It's kind of roughly the same way that companies work. The reason why they're not permanent oligarchies is because eventually new ones keep on appearing, and eventually old ones become less relevant. Yeah. Yes.
Actually,
Yeah.
too many questions.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're going to stop it. Thanks.
So now we're going to hear from our hosts. Brewster Kahle is the founder of Internet Archive, and among many other things, and he's just going to talk to you about all of the great things that they do here, and maybe why we should be donating our Bitcoins to them. So here's Brewster.
Thank you, and welcome to the Internet Archive. This is completely great. Men's room back there, women's room through here. Feel free, even now. Anyway, welcome. And I'm glad that you guys are here. It was, I think, this morning we decided to have you guys come, which is great. I thought I'd give you a very compressed view of not the Internet Archive, but sort of our interactions with the financial system, being a nonprofit in San Francisco, and Bitcoin. And it's just kind of a fun tour of sort of stumbles through this. With the financial crash, we hired a lot of people, welfare to work, to go and help scan books and the like. And we did a survey of what people were spending money on at the Internet Archive, and 30 to 60%, really, 60% was housing. And they were getting ripped off. And so I'd read this wonderful book, David Graeber's Debt, The First 5,000 Years, and it turned out by looking at why was the rent so high, about 2/3 of it is because of debt service. So if you're renting, you really are paying somebody else's mortgage. About 2/3 of it is debt service. So it's not the taxes, that actually doesn't matter. It's not the insurance or upkeep, whatever it is, it's debt service. So I thought, okay, how do we transition housing, at least for people that are in sort of the sharing economy, real sharing, not Uber type, sharing, really sharing, economy, how do we go and transition these folks to debt-free housing? And I dealt enough with sort of building cooperatives and trying to deal with banks, and they generally don't like that idea of people transitioning out of the debt system. So I thought, let's start a credit union. So we started a credit union called the Internet Credit Union. Awesome. So please join the Internet Credit Union. So I'm a chairman of a credit union. But it turned out that we weren't allowed to do anything. The regulators were like, you can't do anything. And so then I guess it was 2013, there was the Bitcoin companies were having their bank accounts closed. I said, hey, maybe we can help out the Bitcoin companies. Okay, so the Internet Archive started getting Bitcoin donations starting in 2012. And then in 2013, we got Bitcoin donations, and we started paying our employees partially in Bitcoins, optionally. It's kind of fun. The sushi place next door, it takes Bitcoins. Please go there. They're awesome. And we're sort of generally supportive. We have a little honor-based ATM downstairs for Bitcoin to money transition, and it's been going on completely well. So we actually, Roman, is Roman here? Roman was here, so we allowed him to start an account with our credit union and one other company, and because the credit union the regulator said that's okay, go for it, and so we did, and then we got an audit, and they said you're going to get a letter to stop dealing with those Bitcoiny people. Really, is it Bitcoin? I said, you have no idea. We can help you out. Internet Archive, Internet Hall of Fame, right? We know about this stuff. We can help you. That was not what they wanted to hear. So they used an intermediary to try to shut us down a week later. And it was really pretty impressive. I've never seen anything this non-linear out of anybody. But they really tried to shut down our credit union fast. And the only reason why it's there is because, well, I have a lot of money. So anyway, so it's continuing to go forward, and we're still trying to crawl our way out of it. Now, we continued to try to transition housing towards debt-free, and we bought an apartment building about 6 blocks away that basically has people that work in nonprofits basically have debt-free, so 1/3 of market rent, but it's tied to employment to try to make it so that people can continue to live and work within a sector like the nonprofit sector. So what's going on? The Internet Archive is still getting a bunch of donations. At the end of last year, we got, I think, all of 19 Bitcoins donated to the Internet Archive during December. And so I matched those with 19 Bitcoins that we then broke up among all of the employees that had an address and gave that out as Christmas bonuses. They're just sort of, I figured that that's the right way of using Bitcoin, is to sort of keep it in circulation. So we now have, a bunch of Bitcoins burning holes in virtual wallets in the Internet Archive, and we're trying to just figure out how to sort of play the game. We're interested in supporting it as the Internet Archive because it's a naturally decentralized service, and it seems like a local currency of the Internet. It's sort of by us, for us. And so I think we should just throw ourselves behind it, and to the extent that it helps justify it or promote it, then that's what we're doing and why. A couple other things. I thought I could give a tour to anybody after the talks. And I don't know, maybe half, and then I'll come down and see if anybody else wants to come up, and we'll go upstairs and we can actually see servers that are our petabytes of servers that are the actual Internet Archive, because we have books, music, video. Well, I don't know, 20 petabytes, is it? Around 20 petabytes now of data on 50 petabytes of serving service, but we actually have them here. So if you're interested in a tour after this, that'd be great. Another thing is on Fridays at noon, we have a free lunch. So please come, and we basically, it's a sort of big buffet lunch, and we go around the room and have our guests introduce themselves, and we do the same for the staff, and then I give a tour if anybody's interested. And it's a way of getting an idea of what the Internet Archive's doing in the other major parts of Wayback Machine, other types of things that we're doing. And so it's a way of getting to know who we are and trying to find some ways to connect in. We'd like to be infrastructure for the open and distributed world, whether it's the next generation web that doesn't have websites, but some sort of cloud, as Dalek said, something that's a distributed cloud systems. How can the Internet Archive help in building the future that we want to live in? Thank you very much, and thank you for coming.
That was great. All right, so I'm gonna skip announcements because I guess if you aren't. Oh yeah, if you want to buy any Internet Archive merch, there's a table back there accepting cash or Bitcoin, so take advantage of that. But also, I'm gonna go lighter on the announcements during the events, and just everyone should probably subscribe to the organizer emails at our Meetup website. It'll just be a lot easier, so I don't have to bore people with announcements during these things. So if you signed up for a lightning talk, we actually only have 3 people on here, so out of 10. So those 3 people should come up here, and then anyone else that wants to give a lightning talk that didn't sign up should also come up here, and we'll start those off. We don't have computer or anything for websites this time, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One minute. Yeah. So, you're Jay? Alright, so yeah, if you want to type in your website, you can do that.
So hi, I'm Jay Feldis. This is Mike Doty. We're Bitseed. And what we're developing, what we have here is a blockchain in a box. So this device can host the entire blockchain node. It costs about $100. Draws about 10 watts of power. The idea is that you can buy it. It comes pre-configured with blockchain. You plug it in, turn it on, and it runs, and it runs the full node. It can run many other kinds of blockchains, tried many different kinds, but Node.js, Java-based, different ones can run on here. What we'd like to see is opportunities to connect with developers developing blockchain products who might find an advantage of having a standardized, easy to deploy box that your product, your blockchain can go on, buy 100 of them, 1,000 of them, distribute them around the world, and you have a working network. It can do proof of stake. So a lot of possibilities for it, and we're hoping to get some new products on it. A perfect example would be Namecoin. This could be a DNS server box that you plug in your house and serve your own DNSs off the blockchain.
How can they reach you? How can they reach you?
Bitseed.org, jfeldis at bitseed.org. There's our website.
So I wasn't expecting a web browser. If this works, this will be astonishing. It works. Fantastic. Hey, I'm Gareth. I was here about 8 months ago talking about a thing called Bitbind.io, which was a service I built to do hierarchical tagging on the blockchain. I don't think this has any internet access. Oh no, it does. Excellent. I built that to service another purpose, which was a thing called DebtBound, which is what I'm now building and have been for a while, and for business around it and all that kind of thing. It's a set of digital collectible trading card games based on the blockchain. started out as solving the problem of how to transfer ownership of physical cards in the style of Magic the Gathering, that kind of game, into the digital space, which lots of people have tried to solve and never really figured out. This computer can't really handle WebGL, which is why it's so terrible, so go home and find your fancy gaming rig and bring this up. But as I kind of got into this space of figuring out how to do ownership of digital assets on the blockchain, I figured out there was all kinds of other cool problems that I could solve with computers instead of people. I generally prefer computers to people. So I continued down that path, and I'm doing all kinds of cool things with deckbound.com. If you go to deckbound.com, you can find out more about that. And you'll find links to me. I'm Gareth Jenkins on Twitter. This is a visualization of deck-bound cards live on the blockchain. We also use the blockchain data for procedural generation of the gaming space and all the abilities on the cards and all that kind of stuff. So give us a shout if you want to know any more afterwards. I'll be around. Thank you.
So the question that we're looking to answer is how do you know what people really know how to do? We come from the education space, and we've been working with Mozilla in building open standards for digital credentials. So many of us in this room have credentials like diplomas that are literally pieces of paper that have very little data as to what you can really do. My undergraduate degree is a great example. I have an undergraduate degree in economics. Do not hire me to be your economist. We are, my name is Damien Evans. I run Achievery. It's a digital credentialing company, and we're looking at putting all credentials, certifications, diplomas on the blockchain to verify what people can really do. And we're imagining a time where the world's skill verifications are interconnected, so that there's an open ecosystem that verifies what people can do and connects them to what they might do best, and it solves a lot of problems in hiring and college admissions. And we're looking for technologists and investors to work with us to really think about how to make this happen globally. And you can reach me at damien@achievery.com or talk to me later tonight. Thank you.
Anyone else? There's 7 more slots. I'm going to take one if you don't.
Do it.
Yeah, I know. Oops, I spelled that wrong. No.
That's pretty awesome.
CIS.
Yes.
So next week, if we're holding a MadeSafe meetup. I work for MadeSafe, everyone, if you didn't know that already. And we're going to be holding a MadeSafe meetup at Geekdom, our traditional event venue for this meetup, next Thursday. It's really kind of, I'm going to be just talking about things that I'm interested in regarding MadeSafe. I'm really interested in this idea of like a kind of digital economy to kind of compensate for what's being kind of neglected with the current economy. So it's really hard to like make money with music or, you know, just as content creators in general, researchers, journalists. And at MadeSafe, we think that our platform can solve a lot of those issues, and I'm going to be talking about those things. So if you're interested at all in learning about distributed storage and computation, not blockchain, but a different kind of consensus mechanism, definitely show up, and there's going to be a few of us there able to answer your questions. So that's me. Anyone else? We usually have like a line, but I guess not. So I guess we'll just end it there, and then if you're interested in doing the tour with Brewster, then he's right here. I don't know if you want to meet right here. Yeah, on these stairs will be great. Thanks, everyone. Drinks, stay downstairs. Drinks and food need to stay downstairs, please. Thanks. It's a really great building. If you haven't been here, definitely take advantage of this.